Okay, good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Zen Honeycutt. I'm the founder and director of Moms Across America, and we're very excited tonight to have on Alexis Bayden Mayer from the Organic Consumers Association. She's the political director, and she's a real powerhouse and a lot of fun to hang out with, and has been an activist for a long time in the area of our food and health and justice. Thank you very much for being on, Alexis.
Thank you so much, Sen. I love hanging out with Moms Across America.
Oh, it's awesome. The last time we saw Alexis, we were it was December 10th, I believe. No, it was actually at the Monsanto shareholder meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's when we talked. And Ann Temple, Ann, give us a wave from Wisconsin, is with us. And Happel, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but Happel from Maryland is with us as well. Thank you so much, Moms Across America, moms from across the country, for being on with us tonight. And we hope if you're watching tonight or if you're watching later on that you'll get some value out of this hangout to find out more about the DARK Act, which is Denying Americans' Right to Know. It's H.R. 1599 is the Senate bill. And Alexis is here tonight to give us an update on what's going on, what's happening next, what you can do, and how we can defeat the DARK Act. Because well, I'll let Alexis tell us more about it. Why do we need to defeat the DARK Act? And please tell us more about it.
So the DARK Act is generally aimed at getting rid of our state labeling laws. Vermont's law is set to take effect in July 2016. That'll be the very first state to implement mandatory GMO labels. And the corporations, of course, are freaking out. And they don't want to see this law implemented, and they're very concerned about it. So, of course, they've gone to Congress to try to preempt the law and take away states' rights to label genetically modified foods. But this law is basically Monsanto's dream bill. They have everything that they've always wanted in this bill. So not only are they taking away states' rights to label GMOs, they're also making sure that GMOs will never be safety tested at the Food and Drug Administration. They're taking away the federal government's right to label GMOs. So the FDA will never be able to label GMOs even if policies and administrations change. And they're also taking away the right of states and localities to regulate GMOs for any reason in any way. And of course, there are many localities that have chosen to have GMO-free agriculture because that's the high-value agriculture in those regions. For instance, the Imperial Valley of California is the #1 alfalfa grower in the United States, and they've chosen to be GMO-free because they want to protect their export market, and they know if they have GMO contamination that their export markets could close. And so they're protecting GMO-free agriculture by creating a GMO-free alfalfa growing region in Imperial Valley. And that would be also preempted. No state or locality could create GMO-free zones under the DARK Act.
Well, this is amazing. I'd never heard about the part where they would not be able to be safety tested. They're taking away the FDA's ability to, if they want to someday, actually test GMOs for safety?
That's right. In 1992, the FDA was beginning to review genetically modified foods. Now, if anyone has read Steven Drucker's Altered Genes, Twisted Truths, you know what I'm talking about. He tells this story in that book. Calgene had put together the first GMO, the Flavor Savor tomato. And Calgene was going through a food safety review. Oh, all right. That's okay. So everybody read Altered Genes, Twisted Truth by Steven Drucker. And you'll get the more in-depth version of the story I'm telling you now. So Calgene was going through a food safety review at the FDA for its new GMO. And the food scientists there were looking at Calgene's studies and seeing that the rats in their feeding trials had stomach lesions. And they were, seeking more information about this. And it was clear that, that could be obviously a barrier to Calgene introducing its Flavor Savor tomato. But right in the midst of this, in 1992, the FDA decided to exempt GMOs as a category from the food additive approval process. That's the bill, the law from 1958, when we started having lots of novel new food additives added to our food supply. And Congress decided that it was very important that all of these new food additives be proven safe before we start eating them. And they completely changed U.S. law, whereas before the FDA would have had to prove that something was dangerous in order to take it off the market. Now corporations had to prove that their products were safe before they entered the market. So this is how GMOs should have been regulated. They should have been safety tested before we started eating them. But in 1992, the FDA said that corporations that had new GMOs could decide for themselves whether or not they had to go through the food additive amendment process. And they invited the GMO companies to exempt themselves and to declare that their products were generally recognized as safe, and submit a letter to the FDA with their assertion that their food was safe, and the FDA might ask them questions, but the FDA would let GMOs off the hook. And I guess this consultation process was supposed to result in sometimes the FDA saying, no, you should actually go through this food additive approval process, and sometimes the FDA would say, yes, your GMO is probably the same as normal food, so we'll consider it generally recognized as safe. But the FDA opened this loophole. They made it voluntary, and then the process became very rote. Every time a new company wanted to introduce a GMO to the marketplace, they would just, if they felt like it, send FDA a letter saying that they thought that their product was generally recognized as safe, the same as normal food, and wouldn't have to go through the food additive amendment process. And normally, the FDA, or in every case actually, the FDA has always sent the company a letter back saying, okay, we have no further questions, but just keep in mind that since we didn't do a safety review of your product, it's your responsibility to make sure that your product is safe the way the law requires. And so it's kind of been a risk that the companies take. They decide that they're going to declare that their product is safe and declare that their product doesn't have to go through a safety review at the FDA. And then they assume the legal responsibility for making sure their product is safe. Of course, since we don't have labeling and nobody knows where the GMOs are in our food supply, it's been a pretty safe bet for companies like Monsanto. They're not assuming too much of a risk. And so far none of us have been able to prove that our health problems are related to GMOs.
And meanwhile, they just go back and say, well, the FDA approved it. If they're all confronted with any sort of health issues or accusations or anything, they just say, well, the EPA approved it or the FDA approved it, don't they? They just sort of they just point back to the FDA, don't they?
Well, they do in a PR sense, but as a legal matter, currently, Monsanto does have sole responsibility for assuming the self-regulation. They have to keep their products safe, but their products are dispersed in the food supply unlabeled. So it would be impossible really for anybody to ever prove that it was because they ate genetically modified foods that they have health problems. So because you can't, there's just no way to prove it without labels.
Right, and one way they keep them safe, one way they keep them safe is by asking the EPA to raise the levels of pesticides that are sprayed on their GMOs because they're genetically engineered to withstand pesticides. So, for instance, corn went from 2.5 parts per million of glyphosate allowed it up to 13 parts per million in just 1 year. And coincidentally, that was the same year that a report came out where some farmers had grabbed some corn and tested it, and there were 13 parts per million of glyphosate on them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a separate issue from the food additive regulations.
Right, yes.
Food additive regulations actually exempt pesticide residues. So if you have pesticides in your food, it's not considered a food additive. So there are all sorts of loopholes that the pesticide and GMO companies are currently enjoying. But this loophole that FDA created in 1992 is currently just a guidance. It's not even a formal regulation. but the Dark Act would cement it into permanent law. Congress would actually be taking this policy and changing the food additive amendments of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act so that this 1992 policy would be cemented in permanent law and couldn't be changed except through another act of Congress. So that's what's so dangerous about the Dark Act, because it would permanently prevent the FDA from safety testing GMOs.
That is outrageous. I just can't imagine that our legislators and senators who are supposed to be protecting us, who also have children and loved ones with cancer and health issues that could be related to the toxins and the foreign proteins in our food, that they would allow this. I just can't imagine that they would allow this. What do you think? Do you think that there's a possibility they will allow this?
Yeah, I think there's a very strong possibility. It's really difficult right now for Congress to pass anything. Today is September 30th, the end of the fiscal year, and we were at a risk that the government might be shut down because Congress hadn't passed the spending bills that it's supposed to pass. So right now we have a Congress that doesn't want to pass any laws, even the laws that they need to pass in order to keep the government functioning. They're willing to shut down the government. So that's the only thing that's stopping the Dark Act from being passed right now. I think that if the Dark Act went to a vote in the Senate, they would easily have the 60 votes they need to pass it. And that's just a very sad state of affairs.
Well, we obviously need to do something about it, but first of all, what is the current status of it? Do we have authors? What's the update? What is going on with the Dark Act right now as it stands?
Well, we're going to see next week. Next week, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, which is Monsanto's front group, it's the front group for all of the pesticide and GMO companies and all of the biggest food companies as well. So this is the front group working for the Dark Act, and they're going to have a lobby day on October 7th, so that's Wednesday next week. And we're hearing that there should probably be a Senate hearing on this issue. Not necessarily on Senate legislation, but at least on this whole issue of GMO labels. And once that hearing happens, we'll have a pretty good idea of what strategy they're using to try to pass this, because the Senate Agriculture Committee is controlled by proponents of the Dark Act. And there are very few members of the committee that don't support the Dark Act and that might vote against it. So we'll see what they're up to when they have these hearings. And then the GMA is saying that probably after that Agriculture Committee hearing, then they'll actually introduce the bill. The big news was that they couldn't find a Democratic co-sponsor. Senator Hoeven is a Republican from North Dakota. Everybody says that he's going to be the one who's going to introduce the bill, but he didn't want to introduce it until there was a co-sponsor that was a Democrat. And sadly, there are plenty of Democrats who would probably be, totally willing to vote for this bill. But so far, we haven't seen a Democrat who's willing to step up and publicly co-sponsor it and stand with Monsanto and say they want to try to pass this bill. So that's kind of a victory. I think that's a testament to our movement, that at least our movement has the strength to scare Democrats who we know are pro-GMO. We know that they want to vote for the Dark Act, but at least they're too scared to put their name on a bill that's associated with Monsanto.
Yeah, and the way that we know that is by simply contacting them. It's not hard. You type in "find your senator" and it'll come up. You can type in your zip code. You just Google it. You just type in your zip code and you call them, email them, fax them, write a letter to them, make an appointment with them, and ask them, where do you stand, and let them know about GMOs. Let them know about the studies and the data that are on OCA's website and Moms Across America and Institute for Responsible Technology and GMO Free USA and the many, many awesome organizations that are sharing hundreds, if not thousands, of studies now which show harm from GMOs and the related pesticides, and lots of good reasons why we should at least have them labeled. And so it's just a matter of us asking them and raising awareness. Can you tell us a little bit about how, first of all, when do you think there might be a hearing with the you said the health committee. When do you think
No,
there might be
it's actually the Agriculture Committee, the Senate
agriculture?
Agriculture Committee. And the Senate Agriculture Committee will announce its hearing probably Thursday, tomorrow, or maybe Friday. And we expect that hearing to happen next week on the 4th, the 5th, or the 6th, on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday next week.
Okay. Well, I wish we could all teleport ourselves there to be there. I wish we had an unlimited budget so that we could all be there. It just is so important. But they won't be making any decisions at this hearing. They'll just be discussing it. Is that correct?
That's right. And you can watch it online. You can watch it on C-SPAN, and you can watch it on the committee's website. So, yeah, you should definitely tune into this hearing next week. Check the Agriculture Committee's website to find out when the hearing is. And on the committee page, they'll have a link to a live stream where you can watch the hearing. And I encourage you all to do that. I'd like to talk a little bit about the states where we need the most action right now and why.
Great.
There was a vote in 2013 on an amendment to the Farm Bill that Senator Sanders proposed. And the vote was on whether or not states should have the right to label GMOs. And the amendment failed, and only 27 members of the Senate voted for it. 71 senators voted against it. And so we have a record on this issue already for most of the senators who are currently still in office. And we know which Democrats voted against the Sanders Amendment and which Democrats would be very likely then to vote for the Dark Act. And so the states where these senators are located are Missouri, Minnesota, Indiana, West Virginia, Delaware, sorry, not West Virginia, Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey. I think I've got them all on that list, but I'll talk about each of these senators and what we know about them. Of course, Senator McCaskill is from Missouri. She is in Monsanto's home state. So, of course, she basically has to be a representative of the pro-GMO side. And she's been very vocal recently. I think that maybe in the past she tried to keep an arm's length distance from Monsanto because, of course, Monsanto is one of the most hated corporations in the world. And so she has not been a strong pro-GMO advocate. But just this past month, in August, when all the senators and congresspeople were on recess in their home districts and interacting with the public a lot in their home states, she was quoted saying that people who are concerned about safety risks associated with GMOs are ignoring the science, and they're just like people who deny climate change. And then within a week of Senator McCaskill talking about that, Senator Durbin from Illinois, he started talking about the people who are opposed to GMOs being just like climate deniers. And so we've seen a couple of these senators who we know are very rabidly pro-GMO come out and carry Monsanto's water in their home states, of course in front of friendly audiences, you know, GMO farming audiences. But they're speaking out and they're getting press for this issue. And then there's Senator Coons from Delaware. He was the Biotech Legislator of the Year. And of course, he could easily be asked to support this. But I think the Democrats know that this is a minority viewpoint, obviously. Senator Heitkamp, for instance, from North Dakota, she's a Democrat. She's very pro-GMO. But when it was rumored that she would join Senator Hoeven, the other senator from North Dakota, she said that she wasn't going to touch this. She said for the record, she's pro-GMO. She doesn't see why people want GMOs to be labeled, but she sees such a groundswell of consumer demand for non-GMO products that, and for labeling and for consumers' right to know, that she doesn't think that the companies are going to be able to hold back for very long, and eventually they're just going to have to give us our right to know. They're going to have to label GMOs. And so she, even though she's opposed to us in principle, politically she wouldn't go against us. And Senator Durbin and McCaskill, you know, they seem to not have any trouble speaking out and being against us in public. But I think a lot of the other Democrats who are on record voting against states' rights to label are a little scared of being out front on this issue. So So the more pressure we can put on them, the better. Senator Donnelly from Indiana is very important. We know that he's supporting this. He was talked about as a sponsor for this bill. So Senator Donnelly, he's also on the Agriculture Committee. Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota, she's also very important. She's an Agriculture Committee member.
Say her name again. Say her name.
Klobuchar.
Okay. Klobuchar.
Yeah. I published an article about all of these senators
Okay.
on our website. The title of the article, I believe, is Can Monsanto Find a Democrat to Co-Sponsor the DARK Act in the Senate?
Great.
So
Okay.
if you Google that, you'll probably find my article, and I have details on 12 senators who are Democrats who we thought might be sponsors or co-sponsors of the bill. So we left out people like Senator Al Franken from Minnesota, who also voted against states' rights to label GMOs. But we didn't think he was going to be a co-sponsor of the bill because Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota would be the better candidate since she's on the Agriculture Committee. But Senator Franken, we know, is against us and will probably vote for the DARK Act. So we need to hammer all of the Senate Democrats who voted against the Sanders Amendment, and most of them are in that article. There are just a few that I left out. There are a few that I think are no longer against us. Senator Baldwin from Wisconsin and Senator Casey from Pennsylvania. They've changed the way that they communicate to their constituents through the letters that they write back to people who write to them about GMOs, and the language has changed in a positive way. So I think that some of the Senate Democrats who voted against the Sanders Amendment in 2013 are now coming around. Some of them even actually came around all the way and decided to join Boxer's bill. So if you look at who's a sponsor of Senator Boxer's bill, S511, which is a bill to make the FDA label GMO foods, then you'll see the people who are on our side. So, for instance, Jean Shaheen from New Hampshire and Senator Warner from Massachusetts, they both voted against Sanders' amendment in 2013, but got enough blowback that they decided to join Senator Boxer's bill. So I think that it's great to see the progress that our movement has made just over the last 2 years, and but we've got to keep the pressure on because there are at least 13 Senate Democrats who would probably vote for the DARK Act right now. That's offset a bit by a few Republicans who probably wouldn't vote against the DARK Act. I think it would be really hard for the senators from Alaska. They're both Republicans, Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan. They're both Republicans, but Alaska is very strongly anti-GMO. They already have a labeling law that impacts fish. They want to protect their wild salmon fisheries from genetically modified salmon. So these senators have had to stand up for the salmon industry, and they've had to go against GMO salmon, and they've had to be activists on this issue with the federal government. So I don't think that they could vote for the DARK Act, even though the DARK Act only touches plants. It doesn't address the issue of GMO animals. Of course, there are no GMO animals on the market yet, so it's kind of moot so far, but we could see GMO salmon hit the market basically any day if the FDA were to give it approval. Also, Senator Collins from Maine, she's a Republican who we think it would be very, very hard for her to vote against Maine. Maine is one of the 3 states that passed a GMO labeling law. Of course, Vermont and Connecticut, they have Democratic senators, so that we know are strongly on our side. But Senator Collins from Maine, she has not been very active on this issue, but we don't think that she could vote against it, or sorry, vote for the DARK Act.
So the people that have senators from other states that you didn't mention just now, other than Missouri, Minnesota, Indiana, Virginia, Delaware, and New Jersey, and maybe Illinois as well, that have senators that we need to talk with them. We need to let them know what's going on, what we want, what the real truth is about GMOs and why we need labeling. The people that have that live in other states, can they still contact these people, these senators that have in these states, and let them know how they feel about that? Is that okay to hear from other states' citizens or residents?
Yeah, it's good to know where your senator stands, so that if you think that they would vote against the DARK Act, you can thank them for that. That's very important. They need to hear praise as well as condemnation, depending on what they deserve, right? It's really important for us to be communicating with them, especially next week when the Grocery Manufacturers Association will be on the Hill having meetings. If we can
Yeah.
get a lot of calls.
It sounds like October 7th is a good day for a massive call-in day, and October 4th and 5th even, the hearing days. I think next week is going to be an important day to be aware of what's going on and know your senator's phone number and make some calls, correct?
Yeah, so starting the week of October 5th, all week long, make calls.
Okay.
But especially on October 7th, on Wednesday, when the Grocery Manufacturers Association will be lobbying, because it would be great to see the phones ringing off the hook in the offices that they're going into for meetings with consumers just telling the senators what 9 out of 10 people want, which is just our right to know.
So, but can I call the senators from Missouri and Minnesota and Indiana, even though I don't live in those states? Does that still matter to them?
Yeah, it does matter. Yeah, one of the first things that they'll ask you when you get on the phone with them is, where do you live? What's your address?
Okay, so they won't log it if I'm not a constituent?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to do that. Unless you represent an organization and you can say that I have X number of members in your state. Now, the Organic Consumers Association has members in every state, and we have significant numbers of members in every state. So I guess in theory, we could all call and say we're representing the Organic Consumers Association with X number of members. But really what matters to them is calls from individuals that they know are constituents. That's what really has an impact. And calls are much, much better than emails. Faxes are kind of okay. They're a little better than emails. But all of these things will be counted. And so any way that you can communicate, and also on social media, I think that politicians, all of them now have social media presences, and they all want a good image on social media. They don't want their constituents slamming them for something they've done wrong. So especially if praise is the same way. They want to look good. So if you can praise them for taking a position that would probably cause them to vote against the DARK Act, please do that. So social media is great. Phone calls, emails, faxes, whichever way you can communicate with your senators is best.
Okay. And now, can I ask my senators, can I make a call, thank them, ask my senator to approach other senators from these particular states and say, hey, can you please have a conversation with Missouri and Minnesota and India, like that? Can we ask them to do that as well?
You can, but I think only if you know that they happen to have a relationship. I think for a constituent call, it's better just to stick to how constituents feel, to tell your personal story. You know, if you can keep them on the phone for a real conversation where they get an opportunity to be educated, I think it's very powerful. But I think, the way I like to approach it, rather than talking about the senators who we think are going to vote against this, I like to tell Senate offices that are on the fence that the wave of movement is against the DARK Act. I like to bring up the fact that Senator Heitkamp, everybody thought she would sponsor this because she's pro-GMO. She said no, she doesn't want to touch it. Senator Stabenow from Michigan, she's the chairwoman she was the chairwoman of the Senate Agriculture Committee when the Democrats controlled the Senate. Now she's the ranking member, but she's still incredibly influential. So telling people that she's opposed to the DARK Act I think is really valuable. And her staff told me directly they don't like H.R. 1599. And in the past, she's worked against other issues where states get preempted on agriculture. So she generally has an anti-preemption stance. I think she's very pro-GMO also, but she doesn't seem to like the idea of taking away states' rights.
Well, I'm just happy because I met with her chief advisor, Rustin, and gave him all of the pesticide information, and he was really on top of it, and it was very exciting to meet with her aide and her chief advisor in person and to be able to talk about the health issues, and he was really great. So I'm just excited because I think maybe we had a small part in that, because a lot of them, when you talk about GMO labeling, yes, of course, for us it's a no-brainer. We want to know what's in our food. But then when we start talking about the pesticide issues, they get that pesticides kill things, and they have that concern, and they really start to think about it. Oh, there's this whole other side to this. It's not just GMOs as a new technology. this new technology is actually allowing the highest levels of pesticide consumption ever in recorded history. And we don't know what that's causing. In fact, we have very strong evidence to show that it's causing disastrous health issues in America, and they all love somebody who's sick. I mean, one of the senator's aides that we met with had Crohn's disease. She was a 20-something-year-old young woman, and she's just like, this might be related to it. And we said, absolutely, it could be related to it.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's another thing to mention for all the viewers. If you've never met with your senators or senators' aides, you'll likely be speaking with and meeting with the senators' aides. It's very unlikely you'll be meeting with your senators, correct? Yeah.
It's true. It's true,
yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. They get the message across to the senators when enough of us speak up about it. How many of us do you think need to speak up to like have it sort of be an issue, like raise awareness for a senator?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends on how big your state is. But, we're, as the Organic Consumers Association, we've been trying to get folks in every state, especially in these states where we have Democrats we think who would vote for the DARK Act. We've been trying to organize in every state. One of the states that we haven't been effective in is in Indiana. We have volunteers who do want to communicate with Senator Donnelly's office, but Senator Donnelly's office has been literally shutting the door on our activists. We had people who wanted to deliver a petition. They called the office. They were told who would be there, what time the office would be open. They showed up, and there was nobody there. So we've had a really hard time getting to certain senators. Senator Donnelly, we haven't reached yet. Senator McCaskill, we haven't reached yet. Senator Coons from Delaware, we haven't reached yet. So it's challenging because usually the Senate staffers are really good people. They're young, they're smart, they got into politics because they want to change the world for the better. They absorb information like sponges. You're telling them something they didn't know before, and it's really interesting to them. So usually these interactions are always positive, even if you're meeting with an office where the senator or a member of Congress is probably against us. You can always make that human connection and engage with a person who's receptive. But we have some offices that are really hard to reach, and hopefully we can take care of that on October 16th when Zen comes to Washington to lead a delegation of citizen lobbyists. I think we'll get to some of these offices for the first time and really reach them. They won't be able to say no. and they have to.
We're excited about coming October 16th with a group of moms to meet with. I wish I had the list of the states that we're meeting already. I know we need to add some more because there's some I'm seeing here on this list that we don't have appointments with, but we will be divvying up. If you want to join us, please do. You can email us through the website at info@momsacrossamerica.com if you're going to get your own transportation. If you want transportation, Truth in Labeling Coalition has a bus that's going from New Hampshire down to DC. I'm not sure the status of that right now, but you can check out her website. And we will be divvying up into different groups so we can reach as many appointments at a time. I know there's letters that are going to be passed out. Truth in Labeling is going to be doing their groups, and Moms Across America is going to be meeting with different states so we can reach as many as possible. So we would love to have you there. There's also the Food Justice March, which is happening on the same day on October 16th at 3 o'clock. I'm glad it's in the afternoon. I think they're planning on meeting with senators in the morning, and then in the afternoon going to the Food Justice March, which is starting at 3 o'clock. You can go to Food Justice March. It's hashtag Food Justice March on the website. On Facebook, and find out all the information. They will be marching at 3 o'clock, and we're going to be getting to the EPA around 5 o'clock. And the plan is to have some rallying and speaking going on there. And then on Saturday, the next morning on October 17th, I believe you're going to be organizing some speakers and things like that, right? On the morning on the 17th.
Mm-hmm. On Saturday the 17th, we'll be doing a rally at the United States Capitol on the West Lawn, and the rally will go from about 1 to 3, I believe, and Zen Honeycutt will be speaking from the stage, I hope, right? On Saturday, or are you
Well,
just speaking
I
on
think
Friday?
my flight is in the afternoon, so if it was in the morning, yeah, I have to double check that. I think I didn't get a flight at the right time, but I will be speaking at the outside the EPA at 5 o'clock on Friday night, but we'll have to double check on the morning time. But I know you're gonna have lots of people who want to speak. You're having people coming from many different states, and they'll want to be they will be talking about what's going on in their states and why we need GMO labeling, and so that'll be really great on the 17th as well. So what other questions? Somebody did have a question about what about the current non-GMO labels. If this passes, Dark Act passes, will those be removed as well? Like the non-GMO project verified, or people who go ahead and say this is a non-GMO project, will those need to be removed?
The first version of the Dark Act did say that the USDA would have the only non-GMO label. They got a lot of blowback from that, and they revised their bill after a committee hearing. And so as the bill stands right now, the non-GMO project would be, I don't think it would be affected
Okay.
ultimately, but they might have to go through a little bit of a hassle with USDA now that the USDA is taking this on. But it doesn't outrightly criminalize other labels or other claims that aren't USDA verified.
Okay. And so they're not going to stick something on it like they did with the RBGH milk, saying there's no claims that this is safer or anything like that. Remember with the milk hormone, there's a little disclaimer underneath that this milk does not, contain RBGH or RBST or whatever it's called, but there's no study showing that it's any safer. Remember how they did that?
Yeah, well, actually, then, yeah, that's part of the Dark Act. It specifically says that you may not infer that your non-GMO product is superior in any way to a GMO product. So yeah, that's part of the Dark Act. I don't think that the non-GMO project, their label or the way they market their non-GMO products conflicts with that, because they're currently working with an FDA that, like you said, makes the people who say that their RBGH-free claims have to come with this disclaimer. So that's the current FDA policy, and the Dark Act takes this FDA policy and makes it permanent law.
Oh my God. And it also makes it able, well, which they're doing right now is labeling GMOs as natural. It's going to make that a law that they can continue to do that, correct?
Yep.
Which is completely insane, because GMOs are it's a foreign protein from one species that's injected into a completely unrelated species. It's not in a lab. It's not natural. It's not possible for this to ever happen naturally in nature. It's done in a lab. That's why they patent it, because it's a technology that they're claiming is special and different, right? So it's really maddening. So okay, so what else? So you mentioned that we can call on October 4th and 5th, and especially on the 7th, we can call and fax and write letters and email next week. What else can we do about this?
Well, that's it. I mean, the best thing is to try to schedule a meeting with your Senate office. And you can do this in your state, or you can do it in D.C. if you happen to be coming to D.C.
And what is their schedule? Are they, because I heard that the October 16th, the senators they're on recess. They're not going to be there. So that means that they'll actually be home in your home state. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
on World
on the mailing list.
Go ahead.
You should make sure to be on the mailing list of the politicians in your area, so that you might be able to get news about public events where they may be speaking. You can also check your local newspaper for that. Put your legislators on your Google alerts so that you can track where they are. There's no one place to track where senators and members of the Congress are having public events. Somebody should do that. It would be a great activist project to do that and make that publicly available, but I've never been able to find anything like that. So you just have to be engaged. I mean, joining the political parties in your area is also a good way to do that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, or you want to get on the mailing lists of both parties in your local area. That's another good way. But you want to develop lines of communication. And the most direct way to do that is go to your senator's website, see where their offices are, find out which office is closest to you, and call that number of that office. And you can, you can contact me in advance, and I can let you know how to represent the Organic Consumers Association, and I can work with you on that. I'm sure Moms Across America can do the same thing, so that you don't have to, call up as an individual, but you can call up as a member of a larger network, and you can say how many constituents are in that network. But do this. If you haven't done this already, do this. It's really fun. It's a lot more informal than you would expect, probably. You are going to be meeting with a staffer. I have had opportunities to meet with senators and congressmen, and no women yet, but I have had meetings with the legislators this year. So it is possible to get those meetings, and you just have to really hound the office, or you have to develop a line of communication, usually through the local party so join the party of the senators in your state. If your state is mostly Republican, join the Republican Party. Go to their events, have an opportunity to meet with the legislators directly. Develop these channels of communication.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a political director of an organization to do this. You don't have to even really know anything about politics. All you have to do is be willing to share your story, because we all have stories about why we're doing what we're doing. I remember when we met with the EPA, Alexis, remember? And we had a breakfast beforehand, and there were about 5 moms that were there just from Moms Across America and the Thinking Moms Revolution. And we sat around, and I asked the moms, what would you like to say in the meeting? And they all talked about the health issues with their children. And they all had a variety of different health issues, whether it was dental issues or autism or food allergies or, developmental delays. And they all had different stories, and they were all incredibly passionate about GMO labeling because they had seen improvements in their children when they went organic and when they avoided GMOs and toxic pesticides. And they're not politicians, and they're not trained, and all they had to do was share that story. And when we did that in the EPA, it was incredibly powerful. And I didn't know what their stories were going to be. I just had them be a part of the meeting because they wanted to, and they were nearby, and they were committed. And I'm just so glad we did that, because having the politicians hear a range of stories, why this is important to you, makes it personal. And it's really important to make this personal, because the right to know, though we do have the right to know, can seem very activist-y and sort of about rights and sort of impersonal. But when you tell a story about, eating GMOs and going organic and seeing improvements and changes, they can relate to that because they all have loved ones that have one form of health issue or another. When 1 out of 5 Americans have mental illness, 1 out of 2 children have a chronic illness, 1 out of 2 males and 1 out of 3 females are expected to get cancer today. When you start talking about health issues, you make it personal, and that's what we need to do when we speak to our senators and our representatives, and that's just my 2 cents about the health issues.
Yeah, Zen, that's been true in my experience. I've been doing meetings on the DARK Act all year, and I send out an email to all the Organic Consumers Association members in a given area, and I don't talk to them in advance about what they're going to say unless they ask for advice. But normally, they just show up and they tell their story, and it's exactly like that. It's tragic because we have a population where, as you say, everybody is either sick or is caring for someone who is sick. So it's very sad. But of course, most of some of the stories have happy endings because somehow, and if it weren't my full-time job, I don't think I would have figured this out. But somehow, everyone, or the people that I meet, are able to figure out that their health has something to do with the contaminants in the food system, and they figure out that they need to go organic, and they get well. And I'm meeting with people who have had serious illnesses, cancer survivors, somebody who has had their gallbladder removed, and after having the gallbladder removed, they're still sick, and then they go organic and they get well. So thankfully, a lot of the folks who are able to do this, I guess, have happy endings to their stories. They were able to figure it out, able to get the right information, smart enough to know what to do and heal themselves through healthy organic food.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, so I just want to touch on, so this is happening next week, October 4th, 5th, and 7th. And some people may wonder, well, October 16th, World Food Day, is that too late for us to be going to D.C. and meeting with our senators, or to be meeting with them locally in our hometowns? I'm really calling out people, please, on World Food Day, to meet with your senators and to pass out information. We have free information on Moms Across America. You just host an event, you get an email with a code for free materials, and you can pass out those materials outside your hospital, your grocery store, your school, your church, wherever you want. Go to your senator's office, give them to them. But is October 16th too late then?
No, I don't think that the Senate will be able to pass the DARK Act this month. They just passed a spending bill that's going to keep the government funded until December 11th, and it's very unlikely that much legislation will get passed before then. There is the reauthorization of the Child Nutrition Act, and we are watching that to make sure that the DARK Act doesn't get slipped into it. Or, I don't think that we could make sure. If they wanted to slip the DARK Act into it, they probably could. But anyway, so there are very few opportunities for the Senate to slip the DARK Act into other legislation that has to pass. And because Congress is so dysfunctional right now, we don't expect the DARK Act to pass the Senate on its own like it did in the House. In the House, it passed as standalone legislation. It's very unlikely to do that in the Senate.
And that would be on October 7th. You're saying it's very unlikely that'll happen October 7th. It's mostly just going to be a discussion, is what you're expecting.
That's right. The Senate is not going to vote on the DARK Act by itself.
Okay,
what will happen if this moves is the DARK Act will be attached to a spending bill, or it will be attached to a bill that has to be reauthorized, like the Child Nutrition Act. It's a bill that has to be reauthorized once every 5 years. And so that's the danger, is that the DARK Act will get slipped into something else.
I think we just lost Alexis for a moment, or she froze up. Okay, so is it just me, or did anybody else seeing that she froze up? Yeah? Okay. All right, so we're just, until she comes back on, we're going to go over a really good point that Alexis made, which is to get on the mailing list of your senator. And that's something that a lot of us have not done. You just go to their website and click on their mailing list so that you're alerted of what their events are, because it's really neat to go to an event or to meet with them and just get related with them. We have one Moms Across America and GMO-free leader who said that she goes to the events, brings a genetic roulette movie, buys the senator's wife a drink, or girlfriend a drink, and chats her up, doesn't really talk about GMOs, but just towards the end just says, hey, you know what, here's a great movie, I'd love for you to have this, and gives them genetic roulette. And you just never know what that will do. You just never know. So get related, get personal, and reach out and talk to them, because you know that the chemical companies are doing this. $20,000 a month is the going rate for one lobbyist, and they have at least 20 of them there at a time. And so we're up against a lot of money, but as Dr. Priya Advani said last week in our hangout, your voice is worth more than $1 million. Each one of you moms, every single one of you, your voice is worth millions of dollars, and we just need to speak up. That's just what needs to happen right now. Does anybody else, any of you ladies, Happel or Denise? Hi, Denise. Thank you for joining us. Or Ann, do you have anything else that you want to join? Anything that you want to add to the conversation? Anything that you've done that was helpful in reaching out or raising awareness about this issue?
Well, no, I've just been really trying to get into Ron Johnson's office, and I have contacted Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, and I have let her know how much we appreciate it. So I'm having a really hard time with him. They said that he's busy in his appointments that day. So that kind of conflicts with the recess thing, but I'm hoping to hear back from them. I'm really looking forward to just meeting this and bringing my daughter and trying to get her educated and turn her into an activist with us. So,
great. Yeah, it'll be great to see you in D.C. We're going to be going to some meetings together. We have an appointment with one of your senators. But the thing is it's okay to meet with senators' aides, and we do want to mention how many constituents we have, right? So we say we're a member of Moms Across America, and I have to get you the numbers on how many constituents you have in each state. I think that's going to be my next project for my intern coming on Friday, is to go through the back end of the website and see what are the numbers, how many people do we have from each state. I think that's going to be super important to have ready for Monday for our calling. And I know that we do have, over 80,000 supporters that have been on our website supportive at Moms Across America, and we have over 700 leaders in all 50 states. So we are represented, and you can say you're calling from, as representative of Moms Across America with constituents in every state. So thank you for doing that, Ann. It's not hard, right? You just pick up the phone and you make the calls. It's not hard.
No,
Denise or Happel, you want to add anything? I think you have to unmute yourself if you want to add anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to know, I've tried to connect with people about the 16th or 17th. And
You've tried to connect with what?
I sent an email out to, I don't know, I can't remember her name at the moment, but to somebody who I'm supposed to connect with to participate in Friday and Saturdays.
Oh, okay. So with Ann Dietrich from Truth and Labeling about those meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you'll be there, you can come with us. I just need to know what state. I remember you said Maryland, right? We need to see if we can get an appointment. For if you want to make some calls to try to get appointments with your senators,
okay.
We can make sure to have a Moms Across America person with you, either myself or one of our other moms, and we will have letters that you can bring. Ann Dietrich also made some talking points. We're going to be sort of dividing up. So if she makes appointments with somebody in Maryland, you'll go with her, right? If Moms Across America makes appointments with other states, then those constituents will go with us. So we have to have one constituent at each meeting. So that's how that will work, right? And if you make your own appointment, then you just let us know, and we'll make sure that one of us is there with you if you would like it, to have a group of passionate moms with you and be prepared with materials. We will take care of the materials and the letters and all of that if you want to. If you want to bring a stack of studies yourself, you are more than welcome to do that. We did that with the EPA. We had a mom print out I don't know how many studies, but it was a 3-inch thick binder full of studies. And now some senators will look at that and some will not. But, for me, it's like on the record that we at least gave that to the EPA. With the senators, I tend to follow up afterwards and give them links to studies, so we're not printing out tons of paper, and we can do that. So
okay,
just email me later, and I'll let you know what appointments we have and where, and if you can get an appointment with Maryland. I don't believe that we have one yet with Moms Across America. So.
Okay.
Yep. And Denise, do you have any questions? No, not right now. Well, thank you for being on. Where are you from again, Denise? What state?
California.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's right. Yeah, thanks for being on. Appreciate it. All right. Well, my feeling is that we're going to be able to defeat this. I just feel that there are enough Democrats and there are enough Republicans actually that do want to protect state rights, and there are enough people out there that get that we need to label GMO foods. So I'm very optimistic about this. I know that it's going to be a challenge, though. I mean, it is a possibility we could lose this. But when every single one of us rallies, and next week, so here's the thing, we're going to need to branch out. We're going to need to not be the only ones calling. We're going to need to tell our friends and family, listen, here's the phone number. Look it up for them. Here's the phone number. Just take 2 minutes to call, and all you need to say is, I'm a constituent. I live in, X zip code or whatever, or town, and I want my senator to vote no on HR 1599, and yes on Senate Bill 511, and yes on House Bill 913. 511 and 913 are the ones that are for mandatory GMO labeling. Those are the ones that we want. And you want to ask them, what is their position? Can you call me back? Let me know their position, right? You know, just start a dialogue. And then, and with the aide, go ahead and tell them your story. Tell that person why you're calling. And be passionate about it. Let them know the health issues. Let them know whatever it is that you want to know. So it's really important to ask your friends and family to also do this next week and branch out. And, you know, give yourself a pat on the back when you have a girlfriend that says, oh, I've never called my senator before. Say, it's okay, you can do it, and encourage them, and give yourself a pat on the back when you get new people to call their senators, because it is sort of a step into the world of activism, and for some people that seems, you know, pushy or fussy or I don't know, irrational or hysterical or something to go doing that. But the fact is that this is, you know, this is our food, these are our children, this is our country, and we elect these people, and they're supposed to be doing their job for us. So it's up to us to let them know. All right, anybody else have anything to say before we sign off? Yes, Ann.
What I did last time for the Dark Act, I printed out some with the phone number and what to say, and I cut them up, and I walked around work. I handed them out to people. I said, here, can you just make this call? The people who are out of town on Facebook, my friends who are out of state, I found out that, you know, the number for them to call. I said, here, call this, please do it. I actually had people message me back saying I made the call, and I was like, thank you, you know, get all your friends to do it. But you know, I have a few people who are like, and you and I have had the discussion, you know, I just don't want to get involved. And I said, well, you know, you're getting married next year. Are you planning on having kids? And, you know, it's a minute of your time, and here's all you have to say. And when you give them that little piece of paper and it's real simple, they're like, oh, I can do that. So that's kind of what they did. They roll their eyes at me when they see me coming, but they do it anyway.
That's great. I love that. And that little piece of paper could just mean a quarter, like you just make a quarter sheet, right? Four of them to one 8x10 page, print it out, cut them up, and pass them out. It's not a big deal. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's really easy. It can be black and white, right?
And I found it better than just sending an email, because that can just be ignored. Then I'm standing at their desk and I'm saying, can you just do this? And then they have, you know, then they're more apt to do it if you actually.
Yes. Yeah, they are, because you've been personal. You've made it personal, haven't you? You've made a personal request by handing that piece of paper. I love it. And I might see that there's going to be some memes coming our way.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I knew that.
The states. So the states especially that we need to contact, we just need to have that state senator's name, their phone number, and call, right? We're going to have a lot of memes going on next week. So very exciting.
Where was that one number? That one number they called, and then it just automatically connects you.
Oh yeah, we can do that as well. But I think highlighting each state senator would be really good. The ones that she just mentioned, Missouri, Minnesota, Indiana, you know, those particular senators, because then that's like, these are the ones to focus on. And especially if they're going to be voting against the Dark Act, they need their phones to blow up. They really they need to hear from us. Yeah. So, but that one call, the one number where you just called them, that is a good one too. All right. Well, anybody else have anything to add?
Nope.
I love hearing new ideas, and I love hearing from our moms all across the country. And I just want to say that it is an honor and a privilege to be able to meet with you and to connect with everybody who's watching. That this is going to be on our website, and that's watching later on. Anything that you do makes a difference. Anything and everything makes a difference. And now is the time. This is crucial. You just heard Alexis Bayden Mayer lay out all the details of the Dark Act. If this thing passes, GMOs will not only not be labeled, it'll be voluntary. We will not know. They won't even be able to be safety tested. And the FDA will never, it'll be concrete, the FDA will never be able to reverse this, no matter who's in office, what president is in office. And it'll take away states' rights. And it'll take away also, she didn't mention, but the from what I heard last is that the Native Americans that have indigenous crops, sacred heirloom seeds, could be contaminated because they could plant GMOs right next to them. There's a lot of really insidious, horrible things about this bill that just cannot go through, and we need every single person to make a difference and to speak up and to do something about this. And we just want to say thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for everything and anything you can do. Thank you, ladies, for being on tonight. Great to see you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.